Hello everyone, it's Jill the Wandering Stamper. Today's a little bit gloomy, but that's okay because I wanted to play with some stamp sets today. This is the brand new Encircled in Nature stamp set. It is in the current online website. It's an online exclusive, so it's not in the catalog, and Stampin' Up! Is putting these out now throughout the year, and they are special stamp sets that are not in the catalog to keep things fresh and exciting for us. And there's a lot of different ways to use the dies and the stamps in this set. So I wanted to make some basic cards, but show you a couple of ways that I use these stamps and thought of things to do with them so that they're way more versatile than I realized. So once I started playing around with these, I realized you can do a lot with these. Things that you might not have thought of. So I wanted to share those with you. So let's take a moment to turn down the camera and get started. I'm so glad you joined me today. The products we're going to use today, of course, as I mentioned, is the gorgeous Encircled in Nature dies. This is so pretty, and this is a great set for masculine cards as well because you can make it very earth tony, so it's not real, you know, flowery and girly like some cards can be. So this stamp set comes with some beautiful sayings, a lot of greenery, and then this really cool kind of wreath made out of a branch. And when you purchase the coordinating...
Jordy has a vet appointment.
Alexa, stop. My apologies. Alexa is reminding me of my dog's vet appointment. Gotta love the internet. So this stamp set comes with the coordinated Encircled in Nature dies. I have mine mounted on magnets because it's way easier to get them on and off. But it comes with the dies for these wood frames. And then it also comes with lots of greenery. So you've got trees, you've got some pieces that cut out the stamps. You've got this really cool wreath, and I'm going to show you some different ways you can use it. Branches, some more trees. So it's really kind of fun to build these cards. And when you start working with it, you realize there's more than meets the eye to it. So I'm going to show you that. Now I'm also on this card going to be using a retired embossing folder. It's called Pinewood Planks. It's a 3D embossing folder. And that's because I don't have the timber embossing folder. That is the current one. And I think that one would be way cooler on this card because it looks like a whole piece of wood rather than plank boards. But unfortunately, I don't have that one yet. So I am going to use what I have. And then we're going to use some rustic metallic dots, some black, some white, and some crumb cake paper. And then of course I'm going to coordinate it with crumb cake ink and some Mossy Meadow and Tuxedo Black Memento ink. So that's our sort of recipe of what we are going to use today. So let's get started with creating this card. So this card is kind of going to have almost like a little scene built on it, and it's sort of going to look like a shadow box, which I always think those cards are a lot of fun. So I'm going to grab my cutter, and I want to show you a trick I learned at the Stampin' Retreat, and oh my gosh, it's been a game changer for me. So I love the clear arm on our our paper cutter. Deep breath, Jill. But one problem you have is when you're cutting on dark paper, you can't really see the numbers on the clear arm because they're black. So what I learned is you can get a piece of copy paper and pop some glue dots on it, and I just cut a piece that's maybe a 1/2 inch wide, and I just tacked it on there with glue dots so I can pop it off if I don't want it on there anymore. And so now when I put that clear arm down, I can see my measurements on the black paper. So oh my gosh, this is so much better on my eyes. So this came in handy today. So we're going to create a basic card base. We're going to cut 5.5 by 8.5. So this is a new sheet of paper, so I'm just going to cut 5.5, and then it's already 8.5. So then I'm going to score at 4 1/4. All right, so that is done. And while I have it here, I'm just going to burnish it with my bone folder. And then the next layer I'm going to want to put a piece of basic white on front of that, and that is going to be 4 by 5 1/4. Okay, so that's going to layer nicely right here, like that. And then I'm going to cut another layer kind of slightly smaller. So we're going to try 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 and see how that looks. 3 7/8. So I'm just making it slightly smaller. So that is going to layer on top of it just slightly. So I wanted more of the black to show, but less of the white to show on the second layer. All right, so now we're going to cut one more piece while we have our cutter out, and that's going to be for the inside, and that's going to be 5 1/4 by 4. So 5 1/4 by 4. So we're pretty basic so far, nothing fancy here. So that's going to be the inside of my card. All right, so now we're going to do our embossing and our stamping. So I'm creating, let me just show you the card I'm creating. So I'm creating this card. So before I do my embossing, I want to stamp this image on the outside. So this is the kind of the branch wreath. So we're going to put that on there first because it's easier to stamp before you die cut and emboss. So we're going to go ahead and get this ready. So this is a round stamp and it can get pulled around. So I kind of take it off there and just kind of plop it on the table because now I know it's not going to be skewed at all, because you don't want to go and stamp something and then try to die cut it and it got a little bit skewed. So just kind of, I call it floof up your stamp if you have a large stamp like that that's got a lot of border to it, so that you know that it's not going to be a problem. So I'm going to put this on my block. It just fits. And I'm going to figure out where I want to put this. Now, if you notice this stamp, let me just point one thing out. There is an opening. So I want my opening to be at the bottom so it's not going to show when I put all my stuff on there. You can, you know, depending on where you're putting things, you can decide where you want, if you want that opening to show or not. I don't want my opening to show. So when I stamp down, I'm going to make sure that my opening is going to be at the bottom. So I'm going to grab my Memento ink. This is a large stamp, so I'm just going to put the ink on here like this and just ink it up real good. This is my drier stamp. I should have got out my juicier stamp, but that's okay. All right, we've got that all inked up. And now I'm going to place my opening at the bottom, and we're going to stamp down on that, and I'm going to put it kind of a little bit more than center up towards the top. All right. And I finally just bought one of these little handy dandy, my husband calls it a air hockey puck, but it just helps get that even pressure on your stamp. So I saw somebody using that and I thought, you know, that's pretty smart. I'm going to get one of those. And I am not sorry I did. All right, so we have that done. So now I'm going to go ahead and do my die cutting and my embossing on that piece. So I'm going to grab out, I should have grabbed my little one, but my big one was out already. So I know this whole thing is not going to fit in my view. I apologize for that, but it'll only take a second. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do my die cutting because, again, I don't want to mush what I've embossed. So I'm going to grab my die, and I'm going to grab the smaller die. And if you notice on the two round circle dies, there is a little notch. And when you're using these dies, if you're using them both together, you can line these two notches up. And so that's the two openings, so that you know your openings are in the same place. Okay, so That's how I figure out where my opening is. So when you find the opening, I know you can't see this. Let me see if I can make some room. My RV table is teeny tiny small, but I want to show that to you. So when you have your die, here's my little tab that sticks out, and here's the opening. And if you put it there, you immediately know exactly where this die is supposed to go. Okay? It's easy to line up when you do that. So just remember that that little tab is where the opening of your dies are. Now, I am looking for my Post-it, labeling, cover-up tape. I've used all my little pieces. I always keep a few pieces on my cutter because it helps me anchor these down because we don't want them moving around, right? So I just line this up as close as possible. Pop a little piece of this tape down. Hair and all, got my hair on there. And then I'm gonna run it through. And I'm gonna have to get out of your view so I can flip this down. All right, so then now that that is cut, oh, and look what I did. I used the wrong, this is funny, I used the wrong size circle, and I cut my circle right out. But that's okay, we'll use it for another piece. All right, I'm gonna pause you for one moment and get another piece of paper cut. All right. So now we have that piece again. I'm going to use, this time I'm going to get it right, people. I apologize. So I'm going to be using the inside. Did anybody catch that when I was doing it? I know you can't yell at me because we're not live, but yeah, that's what I did. All right, so I used the smaller circle this time, which is the correct circle, because I only want to cut out the outside. I don't want to cut out, I only want to cut the inside out of it, is what I'm trying to say. So make sure you do the right one. All right, so that is right this time. So I'm going to run this through my cutter. All right, and so now it's cut the correct way. Cut that out. So that's what you should have. All right, and then this piece I'll put in my box because I'll use it for something else. All right, so now I'm going to grab my embossing folder and I'm going to put this in here nice and straight, and I'm going to use only number 1 and number 4 because this is a hybrid or a 3D embossing folder, so you only use plate 1 and plate 4. I'm going to crank that through. And now we're all embossed, and I will show you as soon as I get all of this out of the way. This is the hardest part of RV living, is trying to craft in a small space. So there we go. We've got our piece cut and embossed now. Okay, so now that that's done, what we want to do is figure out what's going to go behind it. So this is going to be layered here, and then this is going to be on the front. But we don't want to attach this until we do our stamping. So what I like to do is line my paper up the way it's going to be placed and hold it. And then I grab my pencil and just lightly put 4 marks. So I know where the perimeter of my stamp area is going to be. So there's 4 marks there. I'm not sure if you can see them or not. And so now I know where my stamping needs to be, roughly. And it's okay if it's not exact, because it is going to look cooler that way. All right, so I'm getting out these dies. We're going to put these dies away before things get crazy. And I'm going to grab my stamps. So there's a really cool stamp in here. It is sort of a forest of trees. So I'm going to ink that up in Mossy Meadow. All right. And if you can see, it's just kind of it's made to fit in a circle, so it's a half circle shape. So I'm just kind of looking at where I put those marks, and I'm going to stamp my trees there. Okay. So there we go. So now that that's done, I have one more tree I want to use because I want to put 2 trees. I love trees. They're one of my favorite things in nature to look at. Let me tell you, nobody was as geeked out about sequoia and redwoods as me. All right, so I'm going to grab this one and put it here. And then we have a greeting that we're going to add to the middle, which says, thank you, or you mean so much to me. I think it's so pretty, and it can be used for so many things. So we're going to ink that up in crumb cake, and then I'm going to put that right in the middle. Okay, so that's it. So now we're ready to build this. It was not hard at all. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add this layer to my black. And I'm going to grab, I didn't even use my paper under all that. I must be feeling lucky today. All right, I'm going to use some Stampin' Seal today. I usually use my liquid glue, but today is going to be a Stampin' Seal day. All right, so now I am going to just layer this on the front of my card. Now, if you wish, you can use your pencil and just erase those little marks so you don't have to worry about them showing. I love this pencil. Lisa Curcio told me about it, and it is great. This is a Bic pencil, and the eraser just erases everything so well. I do have a link to those on my website under Craft Room Must-Haves. So now that we've got our stamping done, look how pretty. So this is going to go on top, but I want to do that with dimensionals. So I'm going to grab my dimensionals. I have a fresh new pack, and I'm going to start adding those. So I'm going to put some around the edges of this circle because you don't want your circle to collapse. Sometimes it's hard to get these off on a brand new sheet because they're stuck really well. So I'm going to put these on. Now you could also just glue this directly down if you wanted, but I like the height. I just think the shadow box looks really cool. And you could also use around the edges the, where is it? The dimensional strips. I have some somewhere. They're hiding. Here they are. So these foam adhesive strips would also work on the edges of the card. I do that sometimes so I don't have to use so many of my dimensionals. So totally up to you. That it is really easy to use those. And I feel like we don't use those as often, so you don't feel like so worried about using up those as you do your dimensionals. I don't know about you, but I go through a lot of dimensionals. So that's that. And now I'm just going to make sure I put some in the corners. So, because we don't want those to come up. Still having a hard time getting these off. And sometimes I wonder is when they come in the mail, if it got really warm, if it just makes them stick onto the backing that much more. So sometimes just doing it this way works. Okay, that looks pretty balanced. Now I'm going to just take off all of these papers. Some of these are already off. I'm going to look and see what I've got off. This take your pick tool makes this part so much easier. I don't know about you, but I battle with these and then I end up with them everywhere. We call them Klingons in the RV because we find them on ourselves, on the dog, everywhere. So I like to corral them up as much as I can. So now I know I have a very narrow edge, so I'm just kind of looking to create that narrow edge, and then I'm going to, when it looks pretty good, lay it down. So there we go. It actually looks gorgeous just like this, but we're going to go ahead and add some more. So before you came on, I cut out some of these trees. Let me just poke out a few of these little middle pieces. This is another reason you should have this take your pick tool, is you can poke out the little things that don't want to leave. And then I've got this other little tree. And then I also cut out this little branch too. So we're going to add these to our card. And the way I do this is I'm only going to, I look and see where I'm going to place it. So I'm going to place it about right here. So I know I'm only going to be putting my glue on these top two of this tree and then maybe these three. So once I kind of know what I'm doing, then I'll go in and add some glue, because you don't want to glue anything that is going to be in that hole, because you don't want to glue it down. So just do that. Now that I've got that on there, then I'm just going to pop it in place. I just love this sort of shadow box effect. It's so pretty. And then I'm going to place these, I think, a little higher, maybe about right here. So I'm only going to put glue on the bottom two branches. And I'm just putting a tiny bit of liquid glue on the back. It's strong, it'll hold. So we'll put those about right here. And then I'm going to add this little branch right here. So we'll put some glue here, like that. Okay. So there we go. Pretty, right? All right, so it needs a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is grab some scraps, and I'm going to cut a 1 inch, probably about a 1 inch by 3 inch scrap. Maybe I'll make this one slightly smaller. I'm just using the scrap that I cut out earlier. Let's see if that works. 1 inch by 3 inch. Let's make it slightly smaller because I've got a little piece. You know what? I probably have. Let's see if one of these is 1 inch. Nope. This is where you grab your scraps and make use of them. So here we go. This one will definitely work. You don't want to cut a fresh sheet of paper, right? All right, 1 by 3 should do it. And I found a really neat, I was looking for a tag punch, and then I looked at this Very Best Trio punch and thought, you know, I could probably use this. So let me show you what I did. So let's see, punched this out, and then punched it out again. See how it makes this cool tag, right? And then when you punch it out again, you just want to make sure you do the same thing. So turn it over so that everything matches. So look, how cool is that? I thought that ended up being really neat. And you can do it the opposite way and have a rounded end here. So little happy accident, and I thought, you know what? I really like that. I'm going to go with it. So we are going to stamp here for you in the middle of that one. And I am winging it because I can't see what I'm doing right now. We're going to hope it's straight. Oh, it's straight. Look at that. I did something today. Okay. So now that is done. And we're going to layer that on the front here. But I think I want to add some ribbon to it. And you know what? I didn't do this with my first card, but I think it will be cool. I'm going to use my sponge dauber. Make sure that's my brown one. And I'm going to put some crumb cake on there. And I'm going to give it a little bit of color around the edges because it's going to help it stand out on all this white. So I didn't do this with the first card, but I think it will look neat. So we're gonna do it. See how it kind of looks rustic now. So let me clean this off a little. I use this dauber for anything that's brown or tan, so I like to get all the color off before I put it back. Okay, so now I think it needs a little bit of twine. So I have some twine here. And so what I'm going to do is put a glue dot on the back. Which side do I want it on? We'll do it on this side because there's more room. So I'm going to put a glue dot or two right here. And this is going to help hold my twine in place. So I've got this piece of twine. I'm going to kind of figure out where the middle is, and I'm going to wrap it around a couple times and see how it's going to stick to that glue dot. Actually, that's the wrong side. So once you get your first end on there, it'll stick, and then you can just wrap it around a couple times like that. All right, and now I'm going to stick it onto my silicone craft sheet, and I'm going to do my bow. And I'm just tying a regular old bow, nothing fancy. I think a double bow would be really pretty too. I'm not really good at bows, so I keep my bows kind of basic. All right. And then I'm going to give it a little trim. All right. So that's pretty. So now we're going to put this on the front. So of course we need a couple of dimensionals. Let me get these glue dots out of the way before they wreak havoc. Grab out our dimensionals again and add a couple of those. Okay. And then I'm just going to put this down here as close to the center, but I still want to make sure all my fun stuff shows. So that looks good. So now we're going to work on the front really quick, the inside. The inside's super easy. I'm just going to grab my mossy meadow and my tree, and I'm going to ink my tree up and put a tree here because I feel like it needs something inside, right? I think I'll do two trees. I'm going to do one a little bit lower. So there we go. We've got two trees. And I think that's all I want on it. Keep it easy, right? It's so pretty just to have the tree. So now I'm just going to grab my adhesive. I can't wait to show you the other ways that I created cards. This has just been surprisingly fun to play with. And when I first got it, I really thought, well, I can make some pretty cards with it, but I didn't realize how many ways you could create with it. All right, the last thing it needs is a little blingy bling. So I'm going to grab these rustic metallic dots because I feel like this could totally be a masculine card, and these metallic dots seem to go really well. So let's see, I'm going to put one here. And then we'll put a couple smaller ones up here. I just like how everything's kind of earth tony. That's really pretty. All right, so there's our card. Simple, but elegant, right? And I love how all of the colors work together, but I love that little shadow box effect. I think it's super pretty, and it's unique, and it's rustic, and it's outdoorsy. It's perfect for RV life. And then the inside is super simple and plenty of room to write on. So that is the first sample. And let me show you what else I came up with. So this card, I use the Perennial Lavender suite of products. And instead of stamping on the paper, I actually cut out the larger die circle. And then I use the two dies together, and it's so easy to do that. Where is my stamp set? Here it is. So to die cut, to create this little branch here, all you have to do is get your two dies, lay them on your cutting machine, on your paper, whatever paper you're going to use. You're going to lay them on there. I'm going to put this under my hand so you can see better. And then just line up your two tabs so they have those tabs on them. So just line those up, and then when you get it all lined up and spaced out, just tape them down a little bit with washi tape or your post-it note tape like I use, and then run it through. And so then you'll end up with this piece right here. And then if you cut a second larger circle in white, you can just glue this crumb cake piece right on top of the white. And then I raised it up with dimensionals. And then let me show you something else I came up with. I saw somebody had posted the die cut wreath, but they had different color little flowers, and there's no stamp that goes with this. I'm like, well, how did they do that? So the way I did it is I just took this and I ran it through a scrap of Gorgeous Grape or Highlander Heather. I think this is Highlander Heather. I just cut this much of it, and then I took my scissors and I just snipped off some of the buds and glued them onto these little green branches. And then I did the same thing with, remember that crumb cake piece right here that we die cut? Well, I also die cut one of these in crumb cake, but then I also ran the die through a piece of lavender, the Perennial Lavender Designer Series paper that was dark, was Gorgeous Grape, and then I cut the flowers off and glued them on top of it. So I was able to essentially color in the flowers on this and make it look like the heather. So there is another way that you can use your dies. And then of course on the inside I just kept it simple, but this created a whole new way to use those same two dies. So then the third way that I use these dies was to create this sweet card. I used the Flight and Airy Designer Series paper as the focal point, which was a free product in Celebration. And again, you see that little wreath. That is this right here, this die. And I ran it through my cutter, my embossing machine, with Misty Moonlight. And then I also ran it through with Calypso Coral. Then, when I had those two pieces, I only put a drop of glue on the flower buds, and then I laid them down on top of the Misty Moonlight, and once it was dry, I just took my scissors and snipped all the branches off. So I just went around and snip, 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 and so then all I had left sticking to it was the flowers. So that's how I created that. So there's another way to use those dies, thinking outside the box. And then I cut the large circle behind to place the message and layer everything on top. Now to create this piece here, I stamped the floral image, which is this one right here. I stamped it on vellum with Versamark and then heat embossed it with white powder, and then flipped it over on the back and colored it in with my Night of Navy markers, my dark Night of Navy, and then my shaded spruce behind the leaves. So then when you flip it over, it kind of looks like stained glass. So that's how I was able to create that subtle flower right here, and it went nicely along with the flowers that are over here in the paper. And then I cut my bird out. So there's another way you can use those dies and flowers. And then in the inside I kept it simple. So I just wanted to show you how versatile. These aren't just dies to cut out circles. This isn't just a die to cut out one wreath. This isn't, this is way more versatile than you realize. These look like just plain little branches, and I added flowers to them. So take your dies, take a moment to kind of look at them with your stamp sets and see what you can come up with to create something totally different. So there's my samples. I will have all of my cutting instructions and materials that I used on my link below on my website, which is wanderingstamper.com. Just go to my blog. Everything will be there along with photos, and my online store is on there as well. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn how to make more cards, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you get notification every week when I post a new video. I'm so glad you joined me today. I hope you like these cards and these techniques, and I hope to see you soon. Happy crafting!